Welcome, friends of the Museum of South Texas History, wherever you may be. This is great. This Museum Pláticas show that we have, people can watch this from anywhere in the world. It's part of the beauty of technology. And so we thank you for joining us today for the December 2021 installment of Museum Pláticas. We have a very interesting program today. In keeping with the season, my first guest will be Ana Garrigós-Hervert, who is one of our employees here at the museum. And so she does the public programming work here at the museum. And Ana, along with the team, has developed our annual program that's called Fiesta de Nochebuena. And so this is very much part of the Christian and Catholic, expression of the holiday season. And so Ana and I will have a plática about that. And so she will be in our first big segment. We'll go on break and then we will come back with our third segment, second big segment, because this is the first segment. And so that segment will be with Rabbi Nathan Farb from a temple here in McAllen. And so I think that Rabbi Nathan is going to have some fascinating stories that I think we can really learn from. So I really look forward to seeing how another religious tradition experiences the holiday season. So when we come back, we will begin our first plática with Ana. Stay with us. Okay, welcome back, friends of the Museum of South Texas History. So I have a guest with me today. And so those of you who follow the Museum Pláticas, you may remember Ana. She's actually been a guest on the show. How many times, Ana?
I believe twice.
Twice?
Maybe only once.
Ana, can you share with me and with our friends how that's been for you? That once or twice that you were on Museum Pláticas. What was the experience like for you? Were you super nervous about being on TV and on the internet, or were you just like, yeah, this is easy, I'm going to talk to the community? How was it?
Well, it was definitely a first experience. I think I prepared for it a lot on a personal level. Just trying to talk to my friends. I'm not really on social media, so I started to try to post more privately to kind of get a hang of the talking bit. But once I did, I was like, okay, this is fine. It's just, I know the work and I know the dates and the moving parts to present it.
One of the reasons I ask is because a lot of people, most of us, really do have this fear of speaking, even though this may not seem like public speaking, it really is, right? And you're aware of it because you're talking to the world, you're talking to a camera, and oh my God, what am I saying? but son los nervios for a lot of people. But you seem to be a real natural with it. Or do you get nervous too?
I actually wasn't nervous this whole week for this, like knowing that it was coming up, but for some reason I did get a little anxious before, but it's
So,
fine.
Ana, you have led the effort to prepare the Fiesta de Nochebuena. So, talk about it. Talk about how you went about the preparation of it. Talk about the meaning of it. Talk about the purpose of it. Talk about what the community can expect and what they can do and why they should come.
Of course. So the program is Fiesta de Nochebuena. We have been doing this program since 2015. Before that, it was actually, it appeared in museum archives and, programming as Pastorela. So I know we have something at least from the 70s that we were doing Pastorela programming. And then 2015, it transitioned more to Fiesta de Nochebuena, where we talk more about the borderland specific traditions and around Christmas and holidays. But yeah, so it's this like really wonderful event. It's very family friendly, family oriented. We have a couple of activities that are tradition based. So some of them are crafts to make ornaments. Some of the other activities are to do the posada por tiempo, where we have the canto de pedir posada that tells the biblical story of Joseph and Mary. It's something that if you have posada parties, you might be familiar with. And then we have some performances, and we also have Cowboy Santa. So that one's like a little bit of a unique thing that we add to our programming. But
Hey, Ana, did you by chance happen to catch the brand new exhibit that was just mounted yesterday and today?
yes.
The nativity scene exhibit.
Yes, actually, this was a very recent donation that we had to the museum, and it was the Emeritus Bishop Peña who had this nativity collection. So I believe the story is that he had some, and then people saw that he collected them, and he'd keep them up all year round. So then he ended up having these nativity sets from all over the world, because people would bring them to him, and he willed it to the museum, and we got that collection recently, and we decided, our exhibit coordinator, Melissa Peña, decided to put it up in time for the event, and it should be through January, I believe, as well. So we're pretty excited for that one. It's a bit of context too for the event, and it's a big part of like regional cultural sort of tradition. I know personally every year my mother brings out her nativity displays, and she's very careful with them. Over the years, some have sustained damage, I've repaired them and stuff, but she takes very good care of them. And so seeing this reminds me a bit of my mother and her traditions and her important things.
Yeah, I saw it. I was actually taken by it. 75 little nativity scenes, that the bishop collected through the years. And so I think that just so that people can have a little bit more context. So Bishop Raimundo Peña, who was a South Texan, he was from Robstown, and became ordained, I think, in the 1950s, and then he would rise to the position of the bishop of the Diocese of Brownsville. And so he was actually a very consequential bishop here in terms of like human rights and immigrant rights and those kinds of things, fought against the border wall. He was actually quite, vociferous in his own advocacy for people. And so he was really an interesting religious leader and community leader. And it so happened that the bishop collected these little nativity scenes, and he put them out year round.
Mm-hmm.
And people would visit, and people were moved by it, and people began to gift him little nativity scenes, and then to will them to the museum was such a nice thing. We didn't know until the bishop emeritus died in September, and then we got word, I think it was November, when we then, I think that whoever, the legal counsel was, then called us and said, hey, you guys have this, you want to come get it? And so Melissa, went and got it just in the last couple of weeks. How about that? So, okay, so you actually referenced it. You said how the nativity scenes, connect to the larger Fiesta de Nochebuena. But speak to this a little more broadly, Ana, because you are an anthropologist, right? You're trained as an anthropology, you're trained as at the museum, you're a borderlander, you've lived here, I'm guessing, most of your life.
Yeah.
Yes. What's the history of this region and why Fiesta de Nochebuena would be important?
Well, I feel like we have to go back to how Catholicism or Christianity came to the region. So we actually, and it's, part of it is a bit of unfortunate history, right? So there were missions that Spanish colonizers came to set up in the region to try to assimilate the indigenous or local and native populations to Christianity. So it was sort of evangelizing. And sometimes, even if that has like a very violent context and it has a very violent history to it, that has also over the years transformed the culture here. So the people have assimilated, forced assimilation, and then other times it's adopted sort of acculturation, and they have, and Catholicism has just become a very big part of this Hispanic culture, not just here but throughout Mexico as well. And so that's why this is relevant here historically. So there's a lot of history there. And I think that you asked me something else.
Yeah,
you
well,
asked me to connect.
but because I think that you said some very interesting stuff, and so thank you for a bit of the history analysis. All that is, I think, absolutely pertinent. But what I'm also curious about is that, like, Fiesta de Nochebuena is expressed in Cuba in one way. It's expressed in South America in another way. It's expressed here in very particular ways, because of, the synergistic forces of history and, religious traditions, but also the process of colonization, the process of settlement, the process of modernization. And then that this place is also very important because it's a crossroads to the Americas. And so Fiesta de Nochebuena is expressed here differently.
Yes. And one of those ways I immediately think of how, well, Nochebuena is Christmas Eve, right? So it's the day before Christmas, the night before Christmas. And one of the unique ways...
Which translates as Nochebuena, good night. But it's really Christmas Eve, right? Yes.
Yeah, and that's also the name that the poinsettia flower has adopted as well. In Spanish, it's La Flor Nochebuena. That has like another history to it. But what I was saying is that what is unique about Fiesta de Nochebuena celebrations, or Nochebuena celebrations here in the Valley, I think of the tamaladas immediately. So that one I think is unique to Mexico, and then specifically here to this region. Usually it's about the week of Christmas, you might all sit around together and make tamales that are made of maize, which is actually in a grain that's of the area, and it's the tamales actually originally, or it comes from Aztec roots. Yeah,
yes.
So it's so in Nahuatl, I believe tamal is unformed dough, right? So it's interesting because it's like a part of a Catholic tradition, but you see that sort of cultural fusion there. I think that one's specific to here. And the posadas too, you kind of throw a posada, you have the tamales, those two things kind of go hand in hand. So I think that's a unique expression of how we celebrate Nochebuena here in the...
So what can people expect when they come in? You described some of it, right? There's like little arts and crafts, and then there's the nativity scene And then there's other stuff happening across the museum. So what is it that people can expect to see when they come in on Sunday, right? This is on Sunday. This is the 12th.
Correct.
Which,
yes.
interestingly, is also a very important day historically.
Yes, Virgen de Guadalupe. I don't know all the context. My mother's going to get after me for this. But yeah, I do know that it's also a very important celebration.
Why would your mother get after you?
Because my mother is very Catholic.
So I'll fill in some gaps. That on the 12th day of December, sometime in the 1530s, is when the indigenous man Juan Diego saw the apparition of the Virgin Mary in Mexico. It was the Virgin of Guadalupe. So the Virgin Mary appearing as a dark-skinned virgin. And so it was a momentous event, watershed event, that really was part of the conversion of indigenous people into the Catholic faith. And La Virgen de Guadalupe is like iconic in Mexican history, and by extension in Mexican American history as well. Very powerful.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Big icon. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, for the event is from 1 to 5. December 12th, 1 to 5. We will have a schedule of programming. So we're gonna have Posada por Tiempo. So speaking of my mother, right? Some Catholic congregants will be guiding the Posada por Tiempo. So Posada por Tiempo does the Canto de Pedir Posada through the galleries, and it does the traditional singing, the telling the story of Joseph and Mary seeking shelter or seeking lodging for the birth of baby Jesus. But we put a bit of historical context and spin to the Posada por Tiempo. But my mother is one of the volunteers who will be singing, as well as her friends who go to church with her. So they're going to be executing that. That's the most qualified person I could think of to do it. And then that programming will be at 1:30, and then again at 3:30. They will do the Canto de Posada 2 times. And then at 2:30, we will have Edinburgh North High School Mariachi de Oro come in, and they will be giving a performance as well in the Grand Lobby. When they're not performing in the Grand Lobby, there will be holiday karaoke available. So if you would like to, show off your singing skills, you are welcome to take a spin at holiday karaoke. And then throughout the whole evening, we will have a series of make and take home activities. So we will have some Christmas ornaments that you can make, including some paper poinsettias. And if you want to know a bit more about the context of the poinsettias, you can visit our poinsettia display that we will have upstairs as well. So there's a lot of things kind of going on. Upstairs, we will also have Cowboy Santa, and there will be a photo opportunity if you would like to take a photo with Santa. And then we also have, we will have prints available for purchase if you would like to purchase a photo with Santa. And then we will have a lot of food, or not a lot, but we will have a couple of food vendors and craft vendors as well outside in our park. And they will be selling regionally relevant and holiday relevant crafts and food as well. So we will actually have somebody selling tamales for the day.
Oh, wow. So it's a lot of stuff going on Sunday.
Yes, a
Wow.
lot of stuff.
Yeah. So that's going to compete with the Dallas Cowboy football game. You know that? Did you know
Well,
that?
We'll see. I don't know. I don't follow sports.
Oh, okay. But I'm going to be here, and I'm a Dallas Cowboy fan, but I'm going to be at Fiesta de Nochebuena. So before we break, I feel that you have to tell me a little bit about your mother. Like, what's your mother's name? Where's she from? Is she watching by chance?
I don't know. I think for the last time I did the museum Pláticas, I didn't tell them
Does she
about
know
it.
that you're on today?
Might have mentioned it.
Okay.
Last time they surprised me. They're like, oh, they told me like days later. They're like, oh, we saw you. We had it on the TV. And I was like, Oh, okay.
So they saw you through YouTube or through
I
Facebook?
think they like projected YouTube to the
Okay.
TV or something
So,
of that.
¿cómo se llama tu mamá?
Oh my goodness. My mother's name is Juanis, or she goes by Juanis. I'm a Juana Maria.
Okay.
Yeah, and
And
My-
where's she from?
my family is from San Luis Potosí, in Mexico, and particularly La Huasteca Potosina. So we're from the Huastec region, and it's kind of closer to Veracruz. So,
Okay. Yeah. A very historic region.
mhm.
The Huasteca people come out of there.
Yes.
Wow. And a great like pageantry around the Huasteca culture and region. There's dances, there's music, there's all kinds of
Mhm.
beautiful expression. Ana, thank you very much for your work and your leadership with Fiesta de Nochebuena. Is there anything that you think we may have missed?
Well, no, I think just closing elements is that our programming is always transforming, and so that's something that's been very exciting about working here. Even just knowing that the Fiesta Nochebuena used to be Pastorela, and then it has transformed to Fiesta Nochebuena, and I know that we're looking to change out of that as well. Unfortunately, I won't be here for that, but I have high hopes for the museum, and I'm really looking forward to see how they change things.
So, since you made that reference, then you will not be here because you are preparing to go to graduate school.
Yes.
Yes. So, Ana, congratulations to you on your work here, and really look forward to keeping up with you and your growth and development. One last question.
Oh, goodness.
What are your thoughts about having Rabbi Nathan Farb come on here? Because I know you've been, I think, a real global thinker, right? And very interested in sort of the diversity of the region. What kind of things would you look forward to, and what kind of question would you ask him?
Oh, my. Well, to me, that's a very personal question, but I'm really looking forward. I'm really happy that Rabbi Nathan is here, and as far as my interest, I think that, well, I'll refer to a Sunday speaker series that we had. We had Dr. Ali Schottenstein come in and talk a bit about Sam Pearl from Brownsville. Sam Pearl was a Jewish man. He was very involved with Temple Bethel, and he was iconic to sort of the Brownsville culture, even around Charro days and all of that. So I feel like there's a lot of Jewish American history to be told here in the region. I was very happy to do that programming. I was very happy to bring it to the museum, and very grateful to Dr. Schottenstein who did that presentation on Sam Pearl. If you ever cross to Matamoros or to Mexico from Brownsville, then you will see that we have Sam Pearl Boulevard, right? So he's an icon here, but sometimes those stories kind of get neglected, I would say, because of the Christian hegemony and the predominance of
You're dropping big
Catholicism.
words now. Oh my God, Ana.
Well, you asked
You need
me.
to go to grad school.
You asked me, so I am being honest.
No, thank you,
It's
thank
difficult for me to not be honest with you,
No.
but yeah. So I think it's wonderful to bring in that programming, and that's why I'm saying I'm very happy. I'm
That's
very
true.
excited. Have really high hopes to see how the museum continues to expand their programming to be more inclusive and to be more mindful of the other communities that are here in the valley. Because while there is a Catholic predominance in the area, there is so much more. I actually was telling Rabbi Nathan that I grew up down the street from the temple, and those are like walking that sidewalk and taking walks with my mom. It was very, very fond memories.
Wow.
And
So as you and your mother walked through there, did you call it Templo Emmanuel or Temple Emmanuel?
I don't know. I don't remember that well. We probably didn't talk about it. But yeah, that's why I think it's important to yes, talk about it. And
That's terrific.
that's why it's wonderful to have Rabbi Nathan here.
Thank you, and I appreciate that. And appreciate the reference to the hegemony as well. That's good. It's important. We don't talk about hegemonic and counter-hegemonic forces because they tend to, I think, most people might think that they're esoteric, but they're not. They're really part of the fabric of how we live day-to-day life.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Anna. When we come back, we'll be joined by the aforementioned Nathan Farb, Rabbi Nathan Farb. So stay with us.
I'm Kevin Shropshire. I'm from McAllen, Texas, and I'm a contributor now.
My name is Edward Wallace. I'm from McAllen, Texas. I have a family membership here.
Great opportunity for us to be able to be part of something that was totally Valley.
Yeah, it's good to have something that's totally Valley because if I'm not mistaken, I don't think there are any other museums of this quality.
When I see the place from the outside and I walk in and I have anything to do with just being in the museum, I'm like, this is a really cool place.
I don't have any memberships with any other museums. I find I get my money's worth here. One thing is in the bookstore, they have a great book collection there and other things, and you get a discount when you're a friend here at the museum.
The Museum of South Texas History really relies upon the input and the participation, and that includes financial participation of its community.
It's nice to be able to say, well, I'm doing some little bit to help it, because I know it's a huge deal to keep this place open every year.
That it's very fun and educational, and there's many events, and like Pioneer Day and the puppet shows and summer nights at the museum.
This is a really, really fundamental institution. It's a beautiful place. It does really, really important work. It's an attractive exhibition. It's a teacher of our history. You get to be a small but important part of that by just being a member.
You should be a member. This is something important to us to preserve our history. If y'all don't do it, it's gone. If you don't want to support this museum, a lot of that rich history is going to be gone forever.
Welcome back to the next segment, the final segment of this museum Plática. So I'm joined today by Rabbi Nathan Farb. So Nathan, welcome to South Texas.
Thank you, Francisco. Very, very happy to be here.
I'm curious to get your take on the exchange that Anna and I had just in the last few minutes before you came on.
Yeah, well, Anna is very well versed in a lot of multicultural issues, and you brought up the term Christian hegemony or hegemony, however you want to say it, and this is an issue that affects Jews, being a minority in a Christian area or a majority Christian area. That's something that we feel, and especially this time of year when everything around us is Christmas, and that's a holiday that we don't celebrate. We have different holidays that we celebrate this time of year and at other times of year, but it certainly is something that we feel, and it's something that here in McAllen, I think we found or in the Valley in general, we found an interesting balance over the years of how to navigate that here, and really been embraced by the community here in some very interesting ways.
Where are you from?
I grew up in Colorado. I was born in Denver, and I grew up there and lived there until I started rabbinical school, which was in Jerusalem, and then in Cincinnati, Ohio, before starting off at another position in Florida and finally here.
What were the early kinds of instincts that you had as a child or maybe as an adolescent that moved you, inspired you, motivated you to do this?
You know, when I was in school, I can tell you among my classmates, there's about a 50-50 split. Half of the folks, you know, were 7 or 8 years old, and they looked up at the bima, that's the altar, the platform where the rabbi stands. They looked up at the bima, and it's like the light of God shone down. They said, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be a rabbi. And the other half sort of came to this experience over time. Was not this revelation. It was not something. I was one of those. When I was growing up, I didn't have any idea that I wanted to be a rabbi. It was not something that was on my mind. It wasn't until after college, in fact, that I was really finding out who I was and exploring, you know, what am I going to do with my life right now that I'm sort of through school. What is next for me? What is my mission? And one thing that had always been very important to me in my life was my Judaism. And so that's something that I kept coming back to. And it was like a little seed that was planted, and it just kept growing and growing and growing. And after a couple years, I couldn't ignore it anymore. And I said, I have to do this, and I did.
Where did you go to college, and what did you study in college?
Well, I went to college in Denver, the University of Colorado in Denver, and I studied economics. So really, I had no idea. You know, there was no this path was probably laid out for me in you know the infinite heavens, or I don't know, but I had no idea at the time.
What kind of common ground is there between economic theory and what it is that you were moved to do personally and professionally?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just curious to know what you were thinking. What were the forces that were kind of like inspiring you, or maybe not inspiring you, perhaps?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, both of those areas, you know, religion or faith, and Judaism in particular, and economics require critical thinking and thinking outside the box. You know, a lot of people think that religion doesn't involve critical thinking, and you know, in my opinion, that couldn't be more wrong. You have to, if you want to engage deeply with the text and the tradition and the history and the ritual of whatever your faith might be, you have to think about it critically, and you have to reimagine things in each generation, even as you're maintaining what was established before. And I think that's probably, maybe that's one parallel.
Yeah,
you
no,
kind of put me on the spot.
No, but that's good. But you're kind of an on-the-spot kind of guy, it seems.
I do what I can. Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about how your family, your parents, perhaps, would have, kind of shaped your trajectory. Whether it be because of counsel or because of maybe just you go and you find your way kind of thing. And who are your parents and what do they do?
Well, it's interesting. My dad grew up Jewish. He's from Baltimore, Maryland, or Balmer, as they say there. And my mom grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio, and she grew up on the Catholic side of town. She went to Catholic school. She was raised Catholic. And when she met my dad, they had this interfaith relationship, which is very common in the Jewish community because we're such a small community. Even in America, which is, after Israel, the United States has the largest Jewish population in the world. But even here, we're such a small minority. A lot of folks are almost every Jewish family I know has an interfaith component, often Catholic or other Christians. And it was my Catholic raised mother who, she grew up Catholic, now she's Jewish. She did eventually convert, which is another story for another time, I think. It was my Catholic raised mother who, when my sister and I were young, said, these kids need to have a a home in a faith community, whether it's the church or whether it's the synagogue, we have to do it. And she was the driving force behind my Jewish education, making sure that my sister and I were going to Sunday school, we're going to synagogue, we're celebrating the holidays. You know, she learned all of the traditional Jewish holiday dishes. You know, we just celebrated Hanukkah, which is a celebration of lights. And in the olden days, lights meant oil, because there was no electricity. You had to have oil. So we eat foods cooked in oil, like latkes, that's a potato pancake that's cooked in oil, like sufganiyot, which are like jelly donuts. So, you know, we love Shipley's around here. That's one of the highlights of being in Texas now.
Well, I have to introduce you to Phoenix Bakery here in Edinburgh, because you're going to love Phoenix Bakery as well.
Okay.
Famous for donuts, famous for some other things. But yes, I mean, Shipley's is good, but Phoenix is like, oh my God.
Okay.
But go ahead, continue with your story.
Well, so my mom learned all of these, you know, different dishes and the Hebrew language, you know, the language of our prayer. And she was the driving force. Not to say that my father wasn't involved, because he was involved and became more involved over the years. I think a lot of folks that have kids become more involved in their faith through their children as well.
I met your mother, Linda, right before you came on.
Yeah.
We went on a tour this morning, and she's a deeply reflective person, it seems.
Yeah, I would say so.
The way she took in the exhibits, I think was good to see. Yeah, so I enjoyed that experience. Okay, so your mother was key in this thing, and even though you went off and studied economics at the University of Colorado, that there was always this thing about your maybe socialization and almost like, you know, how you came to be, that it wasn't much of a stretch for you after college to then sort of lean in this other direction. I mean, you were already in it, right? And so you must have been, what, like maybe 24, 25 when you said, this is what I'm going to do.
Thereabouts,
Yeah. And then what, you applied to this program? You know?
Yeah, there are just a handful of schools in really in the world, but just a handful of schools in North America that train rabbis, and most of them, or I should say the significant ones, are all graduate programs. So they all require an undergraduate degree. They're all, you know, accredited universities in addition to being religious seminaries. And that was, you know, they're very selective. I was lucky that I had to study actually for a year, especially Hebrew language, which was an important component of it. I had to study for a year before I could even apply.
And to study the Hebrew language, I mean, you would have to be immersed.
Yes, yeah. I found an Israeli tutor who was in Boulder, Colorado, near where I was living, and studied and even went to Israel for a summer to study in an immersion program there, to really learn Hebrew, or at least begin to learn Hebrew. You know, I don't have the kind of mind. Some people pick up languages so easy. For me, it was a real challenge. And I think your folks on the stream are seeing some of these pictures that I took in Israel of, you know, olive trees. That's where the olive oil comes from. And it really is an incredible cultural experience in Israel, being the center of faith for three major world religions, for Judaism, for Islam, and for Christianity, and seeing Jews and Christians and Muslims living together. What they don't tell you in the media is mostly in peace. Most of it is neighbors who work together and live together in the same cities. There are some areas where that doesn't happen, where there is a lot of segregation that's makes life difficult for people who are living there. But most of my travels through Israel, I saw, here's a candy store in Tel Aviv at the bottom. Here's, just at the top is just a neighborhood near Jerusalem, flowers in the window, just, very modern and ancient city at the same time. That was an interesting dynamic of living there and studying there.
So, Nathan, you
Yes.
then become a rabbi formally,
Yes.
and you somehow make it down to South Texas.
Yes.
How did that happen? Why South Texas? How does that happen? And then what is for you this induction process into this community?
Well, there were a couple of different places that I had looked into, and before I came down here, before I really started looking seriously into McAllen, which had an opening, they were looking for a rabbi. I don't think I'd ever heard of McAllen. I didn't know what the Rio Grande Valley was. This was not even on my radar, and I heard sort of through the forces that be, they're looking for a rabbi in McAllen. I said, well, what's that? And I started looking into the community here, and I found, this is a growing community. It's a diverse community. It is a bilingual community, and my besheret, my significant other, Linda, is born in Colombia, a native Spanish speaker. We met in Florida, and I wanted a place where we could start a family where we would have the kind of support in the community where we would both feel at home. And I wasn't sure until I came to McAllen, but once I came here and I got to know the city, and even actually when I came to interview, I came to the museum here and learned a little bit about the history of the region from y'all, and that was part of this.
You all is Texan? Is it you all? When you say but yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead. It's because you're picking up certain nuances that are local.
We get bits and pieces. So I am learning Spanish. My Spanish is about as good as my Hebrew. Right? My Hebrew has been gradually declining in the decade or so that I've been away from Israel, and my Spanish has been improving. Especially living here. Aprendiendo un poco despacio, pero one day I'll be fluent, and then I'll be able to. It's important to me to be able to communicate with my son, who's now just not even who today is 3 weeks old, because he'll be bilingual growing up here and in a bilingual home. So that's really a big part. All of those reasons, the community here, the diversity, and that it just felt like home. And knowing that it's a growing area as well, I think was important. We have so many young families here that are drawn to the valley for I think a lot of the same reasons, that there's just great opportunities here and great community.
Yeah. There is a rich history of Jewish participation, Jewish inclusion, Jewish presence in this part of the world.
Yeah.
And so we were talking about that before, about how even during colonial days, when there was a real push in the Iberian Peninsula, both in Portugal and in Spain, the persecution of Jewish people there, that they went to different parts of the world. Well, this was one of the parts of the world that some came to.
Yeah.
They came to La Frontera de Nueva España. And so we can go back to the late 1500s and into the 1600s, where we see the presence of people from the Iberian Peninsula who were already in Nuevo León, And so there's this real presence. And then, through the years, there's a trickle. In the 20th century, we saw a good influx.
Yes.
Things happening in Europe with more intense persecution, the mid-century.
Sure,
and even the couple decades before the mid-century, you know, where there was a purge and a persecution.
Oh, absolutely.
And so the valley is shaped by that, isn't it, Nathan, as far as you know? I mean,
Yes, yes.
So talk about that, and then talk about what that does to kind of influence your understanding of how you would grow as a rabbi in South Texas.
Sure. You know, if I can cover about 500 years of history standing on one foot. 1492, you know, we're told in school, you know, at least in this country, you know, 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. For a lot of Jews, 1492 is not the year of Columbus, it's the year that the Spanish Inquisition started.
La Reconquista, also the reconquest of.
Yeah.
Yeah. But go ahead.
This was the beginning of a policy in Spain and in Portugal and in all of the areas that were controlled and influenced by Spain and Portugal, which is a lot of the world, that anybody who was not Catholic would convert or be executed, basically. It was conversion at the end of a sword, and it's not something that I think even a lot of Catholics are really that aware of. But for the Jews who were living in Spain for hundreds of years, who were living in Portugal, even before it was Spain, when it was, you know, a Muslim country in the golden age of Spain, when you had Christians, Jews, and Muslims all living together in an incredible society of virtual equality. All of these Jews, many of them did convert, and some of them converted and continued to practice Judaism in secret in their homes. We call them anusim in Hebrew, which means bound or you know, forced. That they were stripped of their identity. Many other Jews at that time, you know, as you said, in the 1500s and the 1600s, you know, the Inquisition didn't happen over a weekend. It was hundreds of years that these policies forced Jewish families to make very difficult decisions, to abandon their history and their heritage and their faith, or to leave and find somewhere where they could practice, where they could live their lives. And for many Jews, the Americas were an opportunity to do that. And you see throughout Latin America a lot of Jewish influence in different communities, because a lot of Jews escaped. They said, we'll be farther from the crown, we'll be farther from the influence of the Inquisition, and we can live our lives in safety. And for some of them that was true. This region in particular, and you were telling me, I'm just learning even more. We know that there are certain places in the Americas where a lot of Jews who were escaping that persecution came. We know in Mexico City, we know in New Mexico, actually. And in this region here is very interesting. A lot of the Jews that came to northern Mexico, you were telling me, and I've been learning since I came here, were Jewish families who were accepted into society and became part of the fabric of society, and did not live in isolation. But because of that, many of them lost their Jewish tradition. Many folks who are from here have Jewish heritage and may not even know it. What I'm discovering is that a lot of those folks are wanting to reconnect, and they're ready to reconnect with that part of their heritage. And we do have people who come to me and say, you know, Rabbi, you know, my grandmother lit candles every Friday night. Why did she do that? I say, oh, well, that's, you know, to welcome Shabbat. Our Sabbath begins on Friday night, and the way we mark that occasion each week is by lighting candles. Or, you know, my grandfather, you know, farmed in a certain way or raised animals in a certain way and had these certain, you know, strange things that my family did that no other families around us did. Is that a Jewish custom? And people are finding, actually, we do have Jewish heritage. And some people are saying that's so important, that's important enough to me that I want to reconnect with what was taken from my family. and are converting to Judaism by reconnecting with that heritage that was lost, that was taken from them a generation or two ago. Of course, we also have a lot of thriving Jewish communities throughout Latin America and throughout the world, of folks that have come to the Valley because of the opportunities here. The same types of opportunities that I'm describing. You know, we've had, you mentioned in the beginning, in the early 20th century, Eastern Europe was not a friendly place for Jews. Probably a lot of your folks who are watching this at home are familiar with the Holocaust, which was the middle of the 20th century, probably the worst period of persecution for Jews in history. Probably a fewer of them are as familiar with the pogroms that existed in Russia and Ukraine and Poland, most of Eastern Europe, where basically mobs of angry villagers who were frustrated by the terrible living conditions there would go into Jewish communities and let out their frustrations on the Jewish community because they were the most vulnerable. And that's a tale as old as time. But during that period, 1910s, 1920s, you had a lot of Eastern European Jews who were coming to America. At that time, it was not easy for folks to get to America, to come here. And one way that the Jewish community that was here helped people get in was to say, look, this is the early 20th century. A lot of the West was still ripe for development, including Texas. They said, instead of coming in on the East Coast in ports like New York, why don't we bring in Jewish communities into Galveston, and they'll have the opportunity to settle in the West. And that's exactly what happened. 1907, I think the Galveston project began, bringing Jews into Texas, and a lot of them stayed in Texas and spread throughout the West. They learned to be entrepreneurs. They learned to be tradespeople. This area was booming at that time, as you were just teaching me a few minutes ago. The Magic Valley. This was becoming an agricultural area. It was really growing up and coming into its own. And all of those farmers, all of those workers, needed to have general stores and needed to have dry goods and needed to have clothing. And these were industries that were familiar to Jews of Europe. And a lot of those folks who came here started some of those stores. And in fact, many of the families in my congregation are still connected with those businesses. They have general stores or clothiers. They sell, clothing, and that's still very common in, the folks in my community, even to this day.
Anna in the previous segment told the story of Sam Pearl,
Yeah.
who came early in the century. I think he may have come from the South, although Anna, you can yell out where he may have come from. I think somewhere in the South,
Yeah.
and settled in Brownsville, and had a store for men's clothing, and he
Yep.
became a very important member of the community because of his store. But he became very acclimated, with the local kind of environment, and becomes one of the movers and shakers in this great celebration that Brownsville has, Charro Days.
Yes.
He becomes an ambassador, right, for a lot of different things that are Brownsville related. And so this seems to me, in my reading of South Texas history, that this is how, a lot of the Jewish population that has come to the Valley from places like Galveston, but a lot from Mexico. And they have figured out ways to become members of the community.
Yeah.
My question for you, Nathan, is then, because, by the way, thank you for the great history context.
Sure.
We're a history museum, right? And so we try to do history as best as we can and with the greatest fidelity that we can. And so the way you just described it was, I think, beautifully done. So thank you for that. Now moving to the present. So you have all of these historical, cultural forces.
Yeah.
How does that all manifest itself in the early 21st century in celebration, in communion, right, of bringing people together? And as we talk about the Fiesta de Nochebuena, what is it like? And you made some references earlier to Hanukkah, right? But talk about that maybe people, not of the Jewish faith may not completely get.
Sure. This area, and I mentioned that there are some interesting ways that Jews in this area and just the community in this area has embraced the Jews of this community in a way that is very characteristic. It's just it's the valley, it is what it is, the Magic Valley, right? We're the South Pole of Texas. We have, our big, holiday parade every year, a big Christmas parade, festival of lights. In the Jewish community, this is also the season when we celebrate a festival of lights. Hanukkah, believe it or not, is a minor celebration in Judaism. It's on the scale of, for Christians, like a Valentine's Day or a, St. Patrick's Day. It's not a major religious festival, but it's an important one, and it's one that we happen to celebrate around the same time that our Christian neighbors are getting ready to celebrate Christmas. And, we have a float in the parade. I think this year we didn't have a float, but in past years we've had a float in the parade that goes through McAllen. We have part of our traditions for this time of year, we have a menorah, which is an 8-branch candelabra. I don't think I have any pictures here. I should have put some pictures up. Actually, we do have, I don't know if you'll be able to pull it up quickly. There is one picture of our Hanukkah celebration this year of all the kids holding candles. And that's our celebration of lights this year. There you go, thank you. Where we are celebrating the miracle of light that in a time of persecution in the land of Israel, well over 2,000 years ago, this was 100 to 200 BCE, that the Greeks had complete hegemony in the land of Israel, complete control over the land of Israel, and wanted to wipe out all other cultures in this particular time. They said, we want to, all of these people, Israel, Judaism is the way of the past. Greek is the way of the future. You should be more Greek, culturally, religiously, in every way possible. Language. Well, there was a group of Jews who resisted that and said, we won't be wiped out by this Greek influence. We're going to stand up and reestablish Jewish practices in the temple in Jerusalem. And they were able, although the Greeks were the most powerful empire in the world, were able to drive out the Greeks from Jerusalem and reestablish the temple. For the folks that are Christian or Muslim who are watching this program, if it hadn't been for the Maccabees, as they were called, this group of Jews that threw off the Greeks, there would be no monotheism today as we know it. There would be no land of Israel. There would be no Jesus. There would be no Muhammad that came later. The miracle that we celebrate is when they arrived to the temple, they went to the menorah, the 7-branch menorah that was in the temple since the time of King David. That even before that, the time of the wilderness, the menorah was a symbol in the temple from that time, and was kept always lit, symbolizing God's light in the world. And when they arrived to the temple, when the Maccabees arrived to the temple, there was no oil that they could use that was appropriate for, that was consecrated, that was appropriate for the menorah. They only found one little jar, one cruse of oil. And the miracle that we celebrate for 8 days and nights is that that oil burned for 8 days and nights, even though it was just enough to last one day. By a miracle, it continued burning even after it should have run out. 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, all the way till 8 days until more oil could be produced. You know, you saw even today. You saw the earlier the oil trees. You don't need to pull up the oil, the olive trees rather, from which is still a major industry in Israel today. It takes that time. I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, no, I think you did. Let me just see if I can situate us in a little bit more context. So,
Sure.
In this country, in the United States, percentage of Jewish people, or at least identified, what would it be? Like 3, 4, 5, 6%?
Even smaller than
Even
that,
smaller
2%.
than that.
Yeah.
In the valley, is it about that 2, 3%? It seems to me like that's bigger in the valley.
I don't think that it is.
You think it's?
I don't know the statistics. I think it might even be smaller than that in the valley.
On the other hand,
Yeah.
what you spoke of a while ago
Yeah.
about how there's been such a mixture.
Yeah.
You know, it's like indigenous people, you know, mixing with the Spanish, say, for example. So, you know, I'm a product of that.
Yeah.
But I'm also a product, I think, at least by my DNA test, of Jewish roots.
Yeah.
You know, of Portuguese roots. Heavy on indigenous northern Mexico, South Texas roots. But there are traces of a lot of
Yeah.
things. So there's a lot of that, I think, in many of us who are here. And it is because Jewish people came here.
Yeah. I think that this is an area today and a community today that is so open and so welcoming to people who are different. You know, it doesn't matter today in Edinburgh and McAllen, wherever you are, in Brownsville. It doesn't matter if you speak Spanish or English. In fact, my experience since arriving here, you know, being a newcomer, is that if you're not bilingual, people are a little surprised. Oh, you don't speak Spanish? Oh, you don't speak English? That everyone here is bilingual. It's just part of the fabric of the community here. And going with that, I think a product of that is that people are a little bit more worldly, a little more open to different ideas, a little bit more accepting of neighbors who might be different from them. And, you know, now there's a big pull factor for a lot of international folks, including in the Jewish community. You know, I have people in my congregation who are from Poland and Eastern Europe, who are from Ukraine, also who are from Peru, and who are from Mexico, and who are from throughout Latin America, that have come here to McAllen or to the valley in general, because this is a place where they said, here we have opportunities, and here we have a community that's going to be more open to having Jewish neighbors, that is going to give us something to celebrate together. And that, you mentioned celebration. That is such a huge part of the Jewish community in this area, that we have celebrated together with the community, this multicultural fabric that we have here, that is, I think, unique to this particular part of the world in a lot of different ways. And it's always been something that we celebrated, and that we've encouraged others to celebrate with us.
Wow. Thank you, Nathan, for being here. Thank you also to the Temple Emmanuel, or Templo Emmanuel, for finding you, and I think that this place is better for having you, and I think also you're better for being part of this place.
Amen.
This is such a great place.
It is.
You picked
It
a
really
good
is.
place, to bring your family and to have your family here. I mean, your child was born probably in McAllen.
Yes, yes. I've got a little Texan living at home,
Well, how about that? What is your child's name?
Joshua.
Joshua.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations to you and your family, and also welcome to South Texas. And in the Museum of South Texas History, you have a good friend, and so you're always welcome to come and
Thank you.
and have fun with us and celebrate and learn from each other.
I appreciate it, and likewise.
Is there anything that I missed that I didn't ask you that you think you should mention or you want to add?
I think we could do this a few more times.
Yeah, I think you're right.
There's the Jewish community here, as I said, is so unique because this community is unique. And the Jewish history here is its own part of the history of McAllen, of Edinburgh, of Brownsville, of Harlingen, of this entire region in ways that a lot of folks might not even realize. And we owe that to this community, and the fabric of this community is an important part of who we have become as well.
Thank you, Nathan. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
As Nathan and his mother Linda and I were walking through the galleries, I pointed out to them this one quote that's one of my favorite quotes in the museum, a quote from La Relación de Cabeza de Vaca, the travel diary of Cabeza de Vaca, where Cabeza de Vaca writes about how the native people in this region, they cared for their offspring more than any other people he had seen. And then right next to it, he says, Cabeza de Vaca, in another entry, that the people from here have such endurance. And so we had a little bit of an exchange there. And we didn't have to point anything out. But Linda was here because Linda wanted to be part and support of the birth of her grandchild, treating the offspring with greatest mildness. And so it's reflected in all of us, And it's not that this region has a monopoly on care or on family. It's not that. It's just this place is so particular about that, and it's like at the top of everything that we tend to do around here. So on that note, we'd like to thank Friends of the Museum of South Texas History for joining us, all of you. Thank you so much for being a part of this, and as you engage with your families and engage the holiday season, love each other, be good to each other, care for each other. And we look forward to seeing you in the January installment of Museum Pláticas. Thank you so much.